Well, the International Organization for Migration has been on the ground in Libya. It's helping migrants and refugees stuck there to return to their home countries. Earlier, CGTN spoke to Joel Millman. He's the senior spokesperson for the IOM. Let's listen in.
Well, our largest effort at the moment is what we call your voluntary humanitarian return. We're over 13,000 this year just from Libya to 24 countries. Flights are leaving practically every day now. When we started this 2 years ago, well, 2.5 years ago, we were barely able to move 100 people a month or so at a time, but now we're moving quite swiftly. We were getting access to more and more migrants in detention centers who are agreeing to work with IOM and their diplomatic representatives from their countries to secure documents and funds to return home. We would like to see in the coming months the end of a detention center and more of a licensing or a registration of migrants who don't have otherwise travel documents to be at large in Libya and then plot their futures accordingly. But right now the movement of thousands of people this year really has to be a positive step, and you see it in the decline in the number of arrivals to Europe from Libya and of course in the number of deaths at sea. We understand that forced labor, forced prostitution, exploitation, trafficking of migrants is widespread. Almost all of the people we speak to mention either having experienced it or witnessing it. The slave markets probably is the most extreme and the most public version of this. I mean, people are held against their will, they're beaten, they're heard screaming as they're being tortured so that families will wire cash to the people that are tormenting them. We understand that those who don't have those kind of resources back home or in the diaspora to rely on are the ones who may be subjected to what we call the open-air slave markets, the auctions. We were taken seriously in April when witnesses told us about this, and we shared this with the world, but of course the subsequent live video that appeared in the last few days, that's had an enormous impact as we expected that it would. But again, abuse is widespread, and the slave markets are just one piece of it. Well, we don't single out anyone, including the authorities in Libya. We understand that the security situation there is dire. It has been dire for years. We see signs of improvement, and we see, more important, signs of engagement with actors both in the international sphere and in Libya itself. You know, it is a long slog, it is a long process. I can tell you that when we started this in March of 2015, just on the repatriation flights, there was a day when we were taking a couple of hundred men out of a prison to go to Senegal. The one individual who had the key to the lockup that was going to open the facility so that these individuals could get on our IOM buses up to Tunisia was killed that morning, and it took us another 12 hours to find somebody who could release these people to our custody. This is very typical 2.5 years ago. You can imagine we couldn't even get charter planes to land in Tripoli because the aircraft insurance companies wouldn't allow them to. Now we have charters twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. So we know that what looks like a terrible situation can improve if you stick with the program. And we have, and so have our partners. So we don't single out anybody for being responsible for the conditions in Libya. Libya is a special case, and we really just think it's time to shift the blame away and focus on the people that are vulnerable and need their attention.
Well, for more on the situation from Nigeria's perspective, let's go live to CGTN's Deji Badmus, who is in Lagos. For us, Deji, the Nigerian president has been quoted saying all Nigerians stranded in Libya will be brought home and rehabilitated. What's the latest on those efforts?
Well, Karen, what I can tell you is that effort is actually on. 2 days ago, about 242 Nigerians stranded in Libya were brought back. They were flown back and they landed here in Lagos. And as we speak at the moment, they've been sent to their various states and communities. And I also know that altogether this year alone, the government has actually brought back about over 5,000 Nigerians now stranded in Libya and also Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, of the 5,000 brought back, 90% of them were brought back from Libya. And that process is still ongoing. As the president has said, the government will endeavor to bring back every Nigerian stranded in Libya. So the process is still on. 242 brought back the day before, 2 days ago. and we understand more would still be coming.
But Deji, how practical is it to repatriate the would-be migrants to countries grappling with high unemployment levels, especially among young people?
Well, Karen, what I would just say is this. I think it would just be simplistic to think unemployment is actually responsible for this problem. It goes beyond that. There's no question. There's the problem of unemployment, but I think the bigger issue is that a lot of people here, especially those who are embarking on this dangerous journey, do not have the necessary information now of what life is over there. I mean, most people who are embarking on, despite the fact that some people are returning, you have quite a number who still want to go. Think of how much, for instance, it costs some of these migrants now. I mean, the journey is not cheap. What we have been told is that, I mean, to make that journey, it costs between $5,000 to $6,000. Now, that's a lot of money that can actually be used to set up something here. But most of these migrants actually go out of their way to raise this money and then embark on this dangerous journey, not knowing that, you know, that it's not a journey that is so easy. So the lack of, and that's what the government is trying to emphasize now, to try to sensitize people, to inform people, enlighten them to understand that it's not all rosy over there, and that even though things are difficult here, but that, you know, the situation is not as bad as some of these migrants actually paint it. So it would be wrong to look at the whole thing from the angle of just unemployment. It goes beyond that. There is that problem of greed as well. And honestly, the problem of unenlightenment, you know, lack of information is a big issue. And that is one area that the government has actually not done well on. And it says it intends to do so going forward.
Okay, so it's beyond unemployment. What kind of solutions would Nigerians be looking out for from the African Union and the EU summit in Abidjan?
I think what Nigeria would be looking out for is probably to encourage the EU to increase its funding of the reintegration program that goes on here, because what happens is that the EU has been involved now for quite some time, has been providing funding for the resettlement and reintegration of these returnee migrants. I know that is going on. IOM, for instance, is very active here, and the funding is provided basically by the EU. But what we understand is that the funding is not enough because the government is actually not supporting as much as it should, even though it is providing personnel now to support the IOM in the resettlement and reintegration program. But funding is very key. And I think what the government would be doing is to probably ask the EU now to increase that funding so that some of these returnees now would get a better resettlement and reintegration program. And we're beginning to see some states in this country, especially a particular state where most of the Nigerian migrants actually come from. I'm talking about Edo State now. I mean, the state is beginning to step up to the plate. It's actually providing some kind of funding. We understand some of those who actually returned a couple of days ago. The state is now getting involved in the resettlement program. But there's no question at all, Karen, that more funding needs to come in to enable the government and, of course, the IOM to resettle most of these migrants who are coming back. But even after this whole resettlement program, there's still the need to increase the enlightenment program, because we have situations where some of those who have returned still nurse that dream now and actually want to go back, despite everything they've had to go through, you know, while in Libya and trying to cross over to Europe.
Okay, Deji, CGTN's Deji Badmus there in Lagos for us. Thank you very much for that.